right, my name is Eve DuBose. I work here in TOPS Software. I've been here for 15 years. And today's training is on Accounts Payable Basics in the TOPS 1 software. I'm here in my sample community, and we're going to get started with the Accounts Payable on the left-hand side. So I'm already in my community. I'm in my sample webinar community on the community homepage. And to get started with Accounts Payable, we're going to go to Accounts Payable on the left-hand side. And we're going to go over vendors, the AP activity, enter bills, and make payments. We're going to go through all of these in the system. All right, so we're going to start with vendors. When we go to Accounts Payable and we go to vendors, if you're in a community and you come into your vendor screen and the first thing you see is vendors with no vendors to show, and you know that you have vendors, don't be alarmed if it's a new community. New communities are not going to show vendors in their vendor list until vendors are used in that community. If you want to see your complete vendor list, you go to the top left-hand corner of the screen here where it says Sample Community, and from the drop-down you click on All Communities. By clicking on All Communities, it will allow you to see your complete vendor list for all communities, whether they have been used or not. And that's important. You don't want to come into your vendor list and mistakenly think that your vendor is not there and then go to Actions and add vendor again. You don't want to do that. However, if you do accidentally add your vendor again, no worries. If you go into your admin screen, you have the opportunity to delete vendors from your admin screen. So if you do have questions about deleting vendors, you can go into your help module here under your little icon guide, click on help, and search for delete vendor, and you'll be able to find the steps on that. But today we're going to stick to the basics. We're going to talk about vendors. We're going to actually add a vendor to start. So I'm going to go to Actions at the top right-hand corner and add a vendor from the drop-down. And when I click Add a Vendor, it's going to populate my vendor screen. Now, all that's required on this screen is an alias and a name. That's all it needs. My alias is going to be fake because it's not a real vendor. And my vendor name is going to be Fake Test Vendor. There it is. I use it quite often on accounts that I do training on. Make that Fake Test Vendor so we can use it. When we do that, it fills in the display name. Now, this other information is not required for adding a vendor. The phone numbers, the email addresses, the billing addresses, if they receive 1099s or not, if they have a federal tax ID or not. But be aware, you will want to go ahead and fill this out. Fill in the federal tax ID number. Fill in the receives 1099s if they do receive 1099s at the end of the year or possibly will. Because if it's not filled in, if the federal tax ID number is not filled in the system here, we're just going to put something, that's not a real federal tax ID number, obviously, and turn on receive 1099s, you will not have them flagged for 1099s. Just like in Pro and IQ, this must be filled in, although it's not required to add the vendor. So we've got our alias, our vendor name, and our display name. And I'm told that aliases can be up to 10 digits long. I haven't tested it. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yep, no more. So it'll take 10 digits for the alias, and that's for most aliases in TOPS. All right, so up to 10 digits for the alias. That's something that's new in TOPS 1. The vendor name can be quite long, and the display name, of course, is the culmination of the two. So I'm just going to click Save at the top. Now, if you're entering in vendors by hand, you would save and add new. But if you're importing from your Pro or IQ, those will be imported for you. So you won't have to add your vendors. But in this case, we're adding one. And when we hit Save, it takes us to our vendor screen. We can then see it. And here's our vendor. Now, of course, just like in other parts of other parts of TOPS 1, you have your attachment gallery at the bottom of the screen where you can add files attached to this vendor, contracts with this vendor, screenshots of the vendor, anything about the vendor. If you have a gated community and you want to indicate the very image of the vendor so there's no confusion of what that vendor looks like when he comes through the gate, you can go ahead and attach that photo, and then down here at the bottom left, set it as a profile photo. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make our vendor's profile photo. I'm just going to refresh the screen here with my refresh button at the top left-hand corner. And then there's our vendor photo. So if he's In a gated community and our gate person sees the vendor come in and he brings up the vendor, he can actually see what that vendor looks like. There's our vendor. We have him in there. As you can see, there's places for phone numbers, addresses, email addresses. You have contacts. So if you have a main contact for a vendor, you can fill that in. Primary contact, so you know who to call in the event that you have questions. You also have the section here for vendor insurance, liability insurance, and workers' compensation insurance. And insurance is a big thing for you guys, tracking insurance. So if something happens on the job, in the community, there's insurance in place, and that's important. So I'm just going to go over here on the right-hand side to liability insurance and click this little plus symbol to the right of it here. And I'm going to add some liability insurance. Now, you could also go down to the middle section here to insurance, and there's an add button. And from there, from the drop down, you can add liability or workers' compensation. Both places will take you to the same thing. So we're going to add liability insurance. And we're going to add fake liability insurance. And we're going to give it an insurance number 12345 for the insurance number. We're going to actually make it expired, though. I like to make expired insurance just to show you what happens when it is expired. Your expiration date was 10/1. We're going to go ahead and hit save on this expired insurance. And then I'm going to come back to our fake test vendor. So now, because we've expired the insurance, up here in red at the top right-hand corner under the actions button is insurance expired. It lets you know in red there. Over here next to vendor insurance is a red exclamation point indicating something's wrong. And then under the insurance section, you have your fake liability insurance here. And on the right-hand side in red, it shows the expiration date. As we go along, we're going to use this vendor as our example, and you will see how often that insurance expired populates on screen. It's very noticeable. You can't miss it. So we're going to go ahead and leave that there. On the right-hand side at the bottom, this is something new, default distributions. And so you may remember this for Pro and IQ. If you have a vendor whose distribution general ledger accounts from the chart of accounts is very specific to that vendor and will always be the same distribution, you can add that here. When you click add distribution and actually add, say, nope, we're not going to do that. It will show you a tour. Did you see that tour? We're not going to go through the tour, but you can if you want to. Basically, you're going to select your community that this belongs to, community specific, such as the ZZZ that we just created. And then you would select your distribution. So look for the, distribution number down here, I don't know, gas or whatever, 100%. You can break it down into parts and then save that. That's up to you. We're not going to save it. We're going to come back to it later. So also here, we're back to our accounts payable vendor screen. And here's our fake test vendor we just created. Again, insurance expired on screen there. I love it how often it pops up. So that's the basics of vendors. Again, this is a basic class. We're not going into great detail, but I'm going to go back over now. From vendors, we're going to jump down to enter bills. We're going to skip AP activity. We'll come back to that. We're going to go to AP enter bills on the left-hand side in the menu of your screen. So the enter bill screen is a global screen if you want it to be. When you come into enter bills, you will select the community. I'm going to do my ZZZ. And it finds it there. Now, if I wanted to do a different community, I could. I just had to type it in, whatever community that was. And you are free to enter bills for all communities as you go along, flipping back and forth between communities by using the community here as you go. From there, you're going to indicate the vendor that we want. We want our fake test vendor. Again, from the drop-down, there it is, fake test vendor, insurance expired. So it's telling us again, insurance expired. I'm telling you, you cannot escape this. No one can tell you, I didn't know, because the insurance is everywhere. This is actually a client suggestion. This is not something that originally was in the software. Someone put in our enhancement request. When you do the enhancement request for TOPS 1, this was an enhancement request. A client said, you know what, I need to see that more. And so they did. All right, so we're going to do a type bill. Now, bills, just like in Pro and IQ, if you do a bill and you do multiple bills for the same vendor, it will try to bulk those bills together on a check. So if you have 5 of the same vendor's bill, it'll try to take those 5 invoices and put them on one check with one full amount. But if you don't like that, you can click the drop down and you have the option of bill separate check. Now with bill separate check, it will always print a separate check for that bill, no matter what. It will say, you know what, no matter what the circumstances, whether it's voided and re-entered or put together with a group, it doesn't matter. It's going to print a separate check for that bill. So if you're the type of company that prefers that, you would choose bill separate check, and it will print out a separate check, even if there are other bills for this vendor. So we're going to do just a regular bill. We're not going to do bill separate check. But notice the type. You also have handwritten check and credit memo, which we'll go over in just a second. We're going to start with bill. Now you have your scheduling, this time only, or accrue and notify me. The accrue and notify me will not post it. It will only let you know that it's out there. That's something you can look up in your help if you're curious about the scheduling. We're just going to do this time only, which means we're going to post it today. The bill number, we're just going to put a bill number in there, 123. Now, just because it says bill number doesn't mean you can't put letters, bills and letters, up to you. Reference, again, 123, ABC. The bank here is not the bank you're necessarily going to pay it out, but it's just the bank that you intend to pay it out. When you get to print your check, you have a second opportunity to change the bank that you pay out of. But this spot where the bank is just the intention. What is your intention to pay out of this bank? So I intend to pay it out of this bank, therefore it's selected. All right, our dates are very important. One of them is important, possibly two, the other one not so much. So the bill date, what you're going to put there is the date on your paper bill, the bill that you've got from your vendor that you need to pay. That's the date you're going to put on there, whatever date of the paper bill. This date is not significant. It's just a holding place for your reference. It's the bill date that's going to be the date on your paper bill, just for your reference. Over here on the right, the due date. The due date is the date that you intend to cut the check. So if you intend to cut the check today, you would do 10/17. But if you don't intend to cut the check till the 31st, at the end of the month, you would put 10/31 in this. So this is your intention. You intend to cut the check on this date. The effective date is the important date. The effective date is the most important. The effective date is the date that it will hit the general ledger and it will hit the accounts payable. All right, effective date is the date it hits the general ledger and the accounts payable. And we're going to have it hit today. And then there's the bill total. How much is the bill for? We're going to say $500. We're going to get down to the bill distribution. Now you can either start typing in a number and it will try to match it, or you can click this little folder here on the right-hand side and find the number yourself. So we're going to use 9010. And then we're going to put the full 500 in there. Now, if you want to do multiple distributions, you can always take out the 500 and put, for example, 400. And click the plus symbol, and you can add a second distribution. We'll do a 90-90 street light repair. Obviously, I'm not. I'm just making this stuff up. So 9010 and 9090. So there's our two distributions. Totals the $500. Of course, you can only have one distribution if you prefer. That's up to you. At the bottom, if you have a picture of the bill, you can attach it. PDFs work best. If you have a PDF, let's see if I have one I can use. We use our lockbox format PDF. So if you have a PDF, you can attach it. Any type of file technically will work, but PDFs work best because if you click on them, they open up automatically. And of course, this is just the lockbox PDF, but it's what we had. All right, so at the top, if you want to post this and move on, you can. Otherwise, you can post and add new, which is what we're going to do. We are going to post and add new so we can add another one. Now, this screen pops up, and most people don't read it. I'm just going to be honest. Y'all don't read this, but you need to read this. What it says, there is no default distribution set for the combination of the sample community and the fake test vendor. Now remember earlier, when we created the vendor, we had the opportunity to add a distribution and we didn't. So it's going to say, well, there's no distribution. Would you like to set this distribution? And it's going to say, well, you use these 2 accounts. Do you always want to use those 2 accounts? If the answer is yes, then yes. But if this is just a fluke, you're not always going to use this distribution of general maintenance and street light repair. You want to say no. Make sure you read these pop-ups. Sometimes they say things that are more permanent than you want them to be. And this is, I mean, even if you said yes and didn't mean it, there is a way to go remove it, but that's a lot of trouble. So it's easier just to say no if you meant no, or yes if you meant yes. So we're going to say no. We don't want it to distribute every time. Okay, so now it brings us back to our enter bill screen. That bill is gone. It's out to our print checks window. We're going to do another one. Let's do our fake vendor again. Our fake test vendor. This time we're going to do another bill, but instead of doing the effective date in the future, we're going to do it now. I'm going to do the same person. So we're going to do our due date as today. Remember the last one, the due date was on the 31st. We're going to do our bill date, due date is today, just $100. And I'm going to post an add new and continue on. All right, so now we're going to change it up a little bit. We're not going to do bills anymore. Now we're going to do handwritten check. Handwritten checks, here I'm going to switch the type at the top to handwritten check. Handwritten checks are the way that you show that you've paid something that you're not going to cut a check for. So if you've paid something online, on a website, with a credit card, by cash, with a check that you wrote out of your checkbook, somebody else did it, however you paid it, other than cutting a check out of TOPS, that's a handwritten check. We can put our bill number in there. We'll do 444, 444. Our check number. If you don't have a check number, use today's date. So for example, today is 10/17/18. That would be your check number. But say I want to indicate how I paid it. Maybe I paid it with cash. So I would do cash 10/17/18. Or I paid it with my Visa. Visa 10/17/18. What's important is that you put that date on there. You don't want to duplicate check numbers. I know I've seen over the years people that just use cash as the check number or 999 as the check number. Please don't do that. What that will do in TOPS 1 is it will try to string together all those duplicate check numbers in the system, and it can cause trouble. So just don't do that. An easy way around that is to use today's date as your check number. Very easy to do that. If you have multiples of the same day, Visa 10/17/18/1, Visa 10/17/18/2. The point is, don't duplicate your check numbers. Please, please, please. More trouble than it's worth. Over here on the right, the bank. For a handwritten check, this is important. This is the actual bank you're saying that you've paid it out of for this handwritten check. So this is a real thing. You don't get a second chance on a handwritten check to choose the bank because it's going to post straight through. So make sure you've chosen your correct bank that you paid it out of. Your bill date, again, is the date on your paper bill. Your effective date for a handwritten check, this effective date is going to be the date that it hits the general ledger, the accounts payable, and the checkbook. Because it's a handwritten check, it's going straight to the checkbook. So make sure that date is the one you wanted. We're going to do our bill total here, 175. We're going to pick on our 9010 just because that's the account I can remember. All right, there we go. Again, with a handwritten check, if you have an image, you can attach it if you want to. If not, continue on. So I'm going to post this and add new again. When I post this handwritten check, it's gone. It's not going to be in any queue to be printed. It's posted just like a fancy journal entry with a check number. That's a handwritten check. Now, for those of you that are used to handwritten checks in Pro and IQ, I'll just give you a prequel to things. You do not void them the same way. You void handwritten checks in TOPS 1 the same way you void regular checks. And I'll show you that in a minute. But just so you know, the voiding is different now. Now we're going to do a credit memo. We've chosen our ZZZ community, our fake test vendor. We have a credit memo. Credit memos are in the event that your vendor gives you a credit. Maybe you overpaid last month and you have a credit, or maybe they charged you too much and you have a credit. Whatever it is, there's a credit memo in the system. So we're just going to put our reference and what have you, our intentions there, our dates. The amount of the bill, we're going to do $10. Now, as soon as we put it in there, it says credit memos must have negative amounts. So it's telling us, hey, put a negative in there. So we did. So we put our negative $10. Our distribution is whatever distribution account we need. And then we have our negative $10 there. This is a credit memo. It's going to go against any other bill that's available in the system and put a credit to it. So I'll show you how that works in a second. Credit memos only work with the vendor that they're attached to. So I'm going to go ahead and post this one and be done. We're just going to say post. So as soon as you post any bill or credit memo or anything, you can see it on screen here. And once it's posted, you have the opportunity to edit it if you choose, or maybe you didn't mean to enter it. You can delete the bill. And this is not just for credit memos. This is for handwritten checks, bills, credit memos, all. You can add comments and tasks to it. But again, that delete, if you didn't mean to enter it, you don't have to reverse it. You just delete it out of the system. All right, going back to accounts payable, we're going to go down to the make payments in the bar. So make payments in the menu, we're going to go there. As soon as we get into make payments, we're going to see our 2 bills and a credit memo. So there's 2 bills and a credit memo on screen. But you'll notice handwritten checks not here. It's not going to be. These are all your open items, 3 open items. But notice next to it is past due, only has 2 open items. So if we click on past due, all it shows us is our bill 333, due today 10/17 in red, and our credit memo. There it is, due today 10/17. So if you utilize that due date to be the date that you intend to cut a check, and then you work in past due, you'll always be paying the check that's due today. If we go back to our open items, you can see this first one, Bill 123 ABC, is not due till 10/31, and that's why it's not showing. There's the 10/31 right there. It's not in red. It's showing you it's not due till then. These are in red because they're due today. So if you work from past due, you'll only be printing checks that should be printed today and not checks that are due next month or whatever. This way you can go ahead and put your bills in to the system and then just print the ones that are due today. So utilizing that due date is pretty handy. Now there's nothing stopping you from coming in here and selecting this check right here. Nothing stopping you from printing it. Even though it's not due till 10/31, you can still select it and print it. That's up to you. All right, so we have our bill and we have our credit memo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you if you select both of these together. Now, of course, at the top you have your different filters. You can click on your filter and filter by certain items here. We're not going to do filters. You can also do select all at the top right and select them all or deselect them all. We're just going to simply select with the plus symbol at the bottom, Bill 333, and our credit memo. So that's a $100 bill and a $10 credit memo. At the top right, we're going to go to Actions. And from the drop down, we're going to say Print Checks. So we intend to print this. When we come into the screen, it's going to show us, here's our check amount and our credit memo of $10. So if you look at the bottom, the total for the check is going to be $90 right now. It's going to show us that both of these are intending to come out of our fake bill, our fake checking account with its balance. It shows us our bill numbers and our references and everything here. It also shows us if we really didn't mean to do the credit memo, we could delete it, but we're not deleting the credit memo, we're just deleting it out of the print job. Down here is the check template we intend to use. We're going to use top check template. It's showing us our last check number was 1010, but maybe we don't want to do the whole $100. Maybe we want to do a partial. So I'm just going to do $60 so that my check is only for $50. So you can do that partial amount right here. It still takes it into effect, and then our check is for $50. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a partial, and I'm going to hit print. Now, when you print the check, it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't go to your printer, and this is very confusing for some people. In order to print the check, you have to then go to AP Activity on the left-hand side, right? You've done your batch. You're going to go to AP Activity. And this may not be one check. You may be printing for 50 checks in a batch. But you go to AP Activity, and then over here on the right, you click Last Check Date. Last check date in black, and that will populate your check. Then you have to say View this check to get the check to come out of the system. And then from there, there's a print button at the top. People ask, why the extra step? So of my TOPS Pro users and TOPS IQ users, I will strike a memory with you, which I've talked to many of you about. So you run your checks and your printer freezes, your computer freezes, the power goes out, something happens in the middle of this giant check run and you lose it, right? All of you have been through this. The check run, then you come to us, you call us, I've just ran 50 checks, how can I get them back? It says they're printed, they're not printed. You have to void them, you have to change the check number, you have to do something. It's always a bad scene, and I personally hated. It was the most horrible thing I could say to someone is, well, there's nothing you can do but just let's go fix it one by one by one. And that's never going to happen again. In TOPS 1, you will never lose your check run again because you take this extra step to come into Accounts Payable Activity, Last Check Date, there it is, and then say View this check. You're never going to lose your check run. If you hit print and your checks don't make it to the printer freezes, the computer freezes, the internet goes down, anything could happen. It doesn't matter. You just come back and hit print again. They don't disappear. They're always going to be there for you to reprint if you need to. So you just hit print. It's going to pop up and say, what printer do you want to print from, which you can change your printer here. And then you just print. If you have multiple checks and you don't want to print them all, you can just say print one of one, 100%, so it prints the whole check. All checks come from check templates, which come from Microsoft Word. Any check you have, we can use. In Pro and IQ, we had designated check partners. You had to use those checks or else it didn't work with the system. That's a thing of the past. With TOPS 1, you can use any check stock you want. You can get free checks from the bank. We will adjust your check template to match your check stock, whatever it is. Most people buy their check stock from Office Depot, blank checks, simple. Any checks will do. So here it is. So you can print that or whatever. We're not going to print it. You can also download it with the download button and email it to someone and have them print it if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but you could. So there it is. So it's printed. If we go back to Accounts Payable and make payments, it's then out of the system. Now remember, we did a partial. That was a $100, which we did 60 of. Our check was for the remainder, so that bill split up. So now we have a posted bill. Originally it was $60 because we did a split. It went to 40. So if we go to our payments button at the top here, so we're back in make payments. If we click on our payments button, it's going to show us all checks that were paid. Of this, it's going to show the printed check for $50. Now it shows two of them, but really there's only one. One of them is the credit voucher, and that's why it shows this way. Here's our handwritten check right here, our handwritten check that we printed earlier. Let me go back. So our handwritten check is also in the same place. If you wanted to void a check, you come in to make payments and you select it. We're going to select both of these. No, it's not going to let us select it because this must be the one. And you go to Actions and Void Checks. And when you void it, it's going to say why. We're testing it. And you say Save, and that voids your check. Now in our payments, we also have our handwritten check. If you want to void a handwritten check, in Pro and IQ, you did some negative check. Here, you just simply select the handwritten check, Actions, Void Checks. Put your reason in, hit Save, and the void check voids. No more of the negatives. When you void a check that's handwritten, it automatically goes back to the vendor, the general ledger, and it comes out of the checkbook, but it doesn't go anywhere else. A handwritten check is always a fancy journal entry. Now, the checks that we voided earlier come back into our bills because these were checks that we printed, not handwritten checks. They come into our bill queue. Now, remember our credit memo? There it is for $10. It came back as a credit memo, but our partial payments, $40 and $60, which did total our $100, do not merge back together. Once you do a partial, if you void that check, the partials will always show in two parts forever. And they work really well. So there they are. So we have our open items, which shows everything, including something not due till 10/31, and our past due, which is our two parts, our original bill that we split up, and our credit memo. So there we are. So that's your checks. Now, we voided that check, but you can always reprint. So say we didn't want the credit memo, we wanted to do the 60 and the 40, and we went to actions and we print checks. We can still print these together as one check. We printed them as a regular bill, so they will print as two line items with the same bill number and the same reference. So we can print that. And again, we print, it disappears. To see it, we have to go to activity, and we have to click on last check date to see that check. Now, even though we have it in last check date, there's another place where you can see printed checks. If you go to Accounts Payable and you go to Make Payments, you can also see the printed checks in the Payments button. You go to Payments and you click on the check 1012. We're going to click on it. You can view this check there. So you can still view the check from there. That's another place. Another place you can view printed checks is in the Activity feed. Here in the Activity feed, you can see the word Print Checks, Payables Print Checks. If you click on the word Print Checks, it opens up. You can view this check there. So there's several places, but the easiest place is just to simply click on Last Check Date on the right. Clicking on Last Check Date takes you straight to that check, and you can print it out. It's just the easiest thing to do. So now we're going to go over to Accounts Payable, and we're going to talk about bills. But what about the bills that you need to cancel, right? You voided a check, and now you need to cancel the bill, the voucher, the invoice. So we're going to go to AP Activity. So you voided a check, it voids the check, but now we need to cancel the bill so it's not in the list of bills to be paid. From Activity, you go to Actions at the top right, and from the drop-down of Actions, you have Adjustments. If you click on Adjustments, it takes you to the Adjustment screen, where you can drop down and pick the invoice that you intend to get rid of. So we're going to cancel that credit memo. So we're going to select Cancel Open Item. After we do that, it says Description. What it should say is, why are you canceling this, instead of description? But that's what it means. Why are you canceling this? So we're just going to say Test. And I'm going to hit Post. Now, this post date is the date it's going to post in. You may need to change that post date. Remember, dates are sensitive. You may need to backdate that to the original date of the invoice. Of course, it was today, but if it was last month or whenever, you would need to change that post date and hit Post. Void checks are the same. When you're voiding that check, it asks you, what date to void it. You may need to change those dates. I know I haven't been paying a lot of attention to the dates that it's posting in because we're doing everything today, but when you are doing entries, always pay attention to your post date because it may not want to be today. It may need to be a different date. So there's our credit memo. We voided it. Again, all these items have the opportunity to delete transaction. You can delete things completely out of the system. They will not bother you. But with Accounts Payable, I don't know if you ever used the Edit AP option in Pro and IQ, but when you edited something, you had to delete every part of it. You have to delete the bill. You have to delete the check. You have to delete the void. You can't just go in and delete part of the transaction. Deleting is something that's very serious in TOPS 1 as well. Even though it's great and it's there and it's easy to use, you have to delete all parts of a transaction. If you leave part of it, you're going to go out of balance, your reports are going to go out of balance, and then you have to find it. So always remember, if you're deleting something, always delete all parts. Personally, I don't like giving the delete function to anybody except for administrators. I would say have a couple of people that are administrators be the only people with the delete function, and then everyone else would go to their supervisor to have things deleted, so as to kind of drop down the amount of deletings going on. Now, there is a place in users and passwords where you can edit who can delete and who can't, if you're wondering. All right, so we're going to go back to Accounts Payable and go to AP Activity. Now, because we've been working in AP Activity, you'll notice it shows us you have one open payable and it shows your primary bank balance. It also shows us this activity feed, and anything in the activity feed that's underlined can be drilled down into. So if you ever want to go back and look at Bill 333, we can by clicking on it. There it is. But maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to look at it through the vendor. So if we go to Accounts Payable again, and we go to Vendors, and now notice our fake test vendor shows up in the screen because we've used that vendor. Again, insurance expired, you can't escape it. But if you want to see your vendor, you just click on them and bring it up on screen. Now to see the vendor history, that's in this balance button. See, it says balance 675. If we click on it, it flips around, you can view history. We're going to click view history. And here's the history. This is all that we did today. We added, we deleted, we voided, we printed, we did all that. Obviously, this is kind of a mess because of what we did today with all the entries, but you can go back and see any of these entries that you want. You can click on anything that's underlined. I'm going to right-click, though. Right-click and open in a new tab so I don't lose my place. And then I'm going to go up to that tab at the top and open it up. Here it is. So you can go back and see those entries, anything that's underlined. This adjustment, we can click on it. We can click back on the vendor, and it takes us back to the vendor screen. Anything that's underlined, you can click on. All right, let's talk about vendor reports. So if we've gone to vendors, we're going to scroll down to the report section and click on reports. And we're going to go into standard reports on the left-hand side. And in the report section, you have your accounts payable reports down here, where you have your aged payable, your check register, your AP distribution of GL, vendor history, AP open items, and vendor report. Now, a word about these reports. Vendor reports will only show vendors that have been used in the community. It's not going to show you all vendors, only vendors that have been used in the community. So when running these AP reports, remember, it's only going to show you things that have been used. It's not going to show you other vendors. But these reports, like the check register, will show you activity. Let's extend our dates and say apply, and then it will show you your entries, which you could right-click and open a new tab and take a look and see the entry. Let me show you how to delete a vendor. So if you have a vendor that you need to delete, you go to admin on the left-hand side. Maybe it's a duplicate vendor, maybe you just don't want them anymore. On the admin button, the big admin button, you're going to scroll down until you come to vendors. Here's your vendor list. And on the right-hand side, you're going to say view all. And then from this screen, you have the option to delete a vendor only if it's never been used before. So notice this one has 3 open items. This one has one. This fake internet one doesn't have any. Let's click on it and see. I might have to add a new one. Actions. There it is, delete vendor. So you can delete a vendor from the admin screen if they have no activity. Now, if you've used that vendor at any point and they have items in there, it won't let you delete them, or it used to not. So if it does now, just it shouldn't. So someone asked if you're cutting a check to a renter or an owner, if you're cutting checks to homeowners, they would have to be made vendors. So once you have made them a vendor, just like in Pro and IQ, then you can cut a check for them. doesn't automatically connect back to their account, just like in Pro and IQ. It doesn't connect. The vendor won't connect back to the owner's account. Reference line, is this comment printed on the check? Let's go see. Let's go see what it looks like. So we put a reference in there. I know we did. Yep, there it is right there. There's the reference on the statement, but it's not on the check itself. So a word about that. This template is a Microsoft Word template, and the reference is actually a merge code. So you could come up here under Pay to the Order of and add the word reference and put the reference merge code on the check. So yes, you could add the reference to the check if you wanted to. Technically, you can add anything to the check that you want to. Is there a way to edit the community name if you enter a payable to the wrong community? Okay, so if you go back to Accounts Payable, enter bills, and we've done this fake. I'm sorry, I just have to try it. 888, 888, 9010. So say you've posted it. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. So we're going to post it. Let's delete this. We don't need the extra one. And we've posted it, and we go, uh-oh, that's the wrong community. We can go to Actions and edit the bill. And it looks like you cannot edit the community. Nope, you can't edit the community once it's been posted, but let's say you didn't edit the bill, say you just deleted the bill and start over. So there's that. You can delete the bill and start over if it's been printed to the wrong community. But when you edit it, as you can see, there's no way to edit the community ID. So the next question was, if you have a bill that's slotted for 1031, so this bill is slotted for 1031, but we went ahead and paid it today, what bill date would it have? It would have today's date. So if we picked it for today and then we print checks, it would have today's date, post date 1017. Let's see if we forward it. Let's see if we change it to 1031, what will happen. So it's gone. It's in our payments. So we did our, here it is, check 1013, posted 1031. Let's look at it. View this check. Now I had to physically change that date, but yes, it shows the 1031 date. Remember, I had to physically change the date when I posted it. So I can't get back to it, but you saw I had to change the post date. So you will have to change the post date, but you can put a forward date on it if you want to. When you're printing, doing checks for each association, you have to go into each one. Okay, so she's saying, if you go into the enter bills and you're going all over the place to do different communities to make these, so you have all these different communities and you're printing, making bills for all of them, and then you go in to print checks. Can you print checks from all communities, or do you have to go into each community to print a check? And the answer is you do have to go into each community to print the checks. I was trying to show you. These are not good expense accounts, but you'll see. So even though you can go to Accounts Payable, make payments, and you can go up here and do all communities, and you can select all communities to print, actions, print checks. Because you have to go back to AP activity, you will have to be, see how there's no last check in all communities, you will have to go into the individual community in order to get that last check date to show. So no, even though you can do bills in all communities, you will still have to go into each community to actually get the check to print out. Checks, the checks just have 3 lines, one for the vendor and the state template with 4 lines. Yes, checks are completely editable, the templates. If you have a template in your template library for a check, as you can see, all checks are editable in Microsoft Word. So if you have a check, so we're using the top check, I'm going to download it. It opens in Microsoft Word. Everything is editable. You can have as much as you want. You can have as many things as you want to add to the check. So for example, somebody mentioned a reference line. So we're just going to go enter reference. And then over here, we would add the merge code for reference. Hold on, there. Let's just open it up. Let me get my merge codes here. I know I'm not going slow, but that's because I just want to show you it can be done. So here's your reference entered on bill or invoice. There's your reference line. And then this can be saved and this can be printed. If you want to add multiple lines to the vendor, you can add multiple lines. Any of this stuff can be personally edited as long as it fits in the space. That's the only thing that holds you back. You only have so much space. You can see all these tables for the checks and things. It will hold you back because you can only fit so much in the space. So templates are not necessarily something you have to do yourself. Support is completely available for you to let them know you need assistance in creating a template. They will assist you in creating a template. Don't worry about templates being hard. Just simply put a ticket in with support and say, I need you to help me set up my template. Of course, they'll need some input from you and you'll have to test it for them, but they can help you setting it up. Is there a way to edit the auto GL distribution for a vendor? Yes. So if you have set up a vendor with a distribution, you can go into that vendor at the bottom into this distribution list. So if we added a distribution, let's just pretend that we had set one up and saved it. So now at the bottom, that distribution is there. There's a pencil next to that distribution and you can edit that. The same token, when you are making a bill, enter bills, and you use that vendor, if I could spell, it's going to populate that vendor distribution. You just simply click out of it and use a different number. So you can do that. You can change the distribution, very simple. So the reference that you put on the check, someone asked where I got that. It's in your merge code manager. So when you're opening up that check, where is the check? There it is. All right, so whenever you have your merge codes up over here, insert, you go to the store or apps and you get your TOPS Merge Code Manager, and that's how you get it. So if you don't have the TOPS Merge Code Manager, you would click on your store at the top. And remember, this requires Microsoft Word 2013 or above. If you have anything lower than 2013, you're not going to have the store or the add-ins. It's an add-in. From the store, it's going to populate, and you're going to tell it to find TOPS, T-O-P-S, in the search bar, T-O-P-S, and search. And there it is, your TOPS Merge Code Manager. You just add it. And then when you get your Merge Code Manager over here on the right, you just skip. You don't need to log in. You just hit skip. And then choose your template check. Make sure you're using check templates. And then you do all. And then from there, you can find your references. MNOPR, reference entered on a bill or invoice. All right, you guys, I hope it helped. And thank you. Have a good day.